views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when.
Hello, this is Patty Hunter of Patty's Page. Today's special guest is David Darwin. He is the National Secretary of Christian Heritage Party of Canada. Welcome to my show, dear.
Thank you very much, Patty.
Let's describe what Christian Heritage Party of Canada is, or CHP.
CHP is the seventh largest federal political party in Canada. It's the only pro-life, pro-family, pro-freedom federal party in Canada. So we follow the Christian principles, the Judeo-Christian principles, and we take our cue from the Bible for our policies and for our actions.
So being a national secretary, what do you do? What's your role?
Well, my main role is taking the minutes for our national board meetings, and I also hold the official records of the party. So I have this little ways from me here, all of the records back to the origins of the party and all of the minutes of meetings and that type of thing. So I'm called on from time to time to go back into the archives and research some matters that might be coming up currently that have been dealt with from before.
So how old is CHP?
CHP was founded in 1986 and participated in the first federal election in 1988.
Wow. How long have you been there?
I beg your pardon?
How long have you been there?
My wife and I joined the party about 18, 19 years ago, I guess. We were looking for a pro-life party on the federal area, and we, for some reason, had missed CHP in the previous years, which is not uncommon for small parties that they don't really get a lot of notice or play in the media and so on. But we researched the party and said, hey, this sounds like home for us. So we joined at that time as life members. And as time went along, got more and more involved, participated in the local electoral district. I ended up being, I'm currently CEO of one of the electoral districts here in Ottawa. And that led to me being noticed by our national leader, Rod Taylor, who you had as a guest a while ago. Yeah. And he asked me to take a little more active role in policy development and so on. And then last September at the National Convention in Calgary, I was elected as the National Secretary for a 3-year term.
Oh, 3-year term. So when's it turn up? Another couple of years? Or?
Yeah, well, I can, the Constitution allows me to serve 2 3-year terms before they kick me off. So ideally I can be around for 6 years. And so that will take me through probably 2 more conventions. That's probably one of the more grinding roles of the National Secretary is at the National Convention, keeping track of resolutions and motions and amendments and all that kind of stuff that goes with setting policy for the for CHP.
Do you pass any bills yourself, or is it just Rod? Or?
No, we don't have. We have no representation in Parliament, so most of our efforts are through communicating with the elected representatives, putting out things like the way you found me for today's interview through communiques and messages and so on. There's one that's done every week, and it's sent out to across the country and published on our website and so on. So we try to influence decision makers to have them respect and reflect the Christian values that we espouse and stand for. So that's most of our work is that way. And some of the members are very active with their local members of parliament. They're well known, and they write a lot of letters to the editor. And
So get on the media.
yeah, well, it's the only way we can get media coverage is through letters to the editor or writing an op-ed piece or something like that. So, it's happened that in the last year, I guess I've done 3 or 4 of these pieces for general distribution and so on. So it helps. It's interesting because on this one and a previous one I did, members will write in. They've got my email address, so they write in with comments or questions and so on. So it helps us to engage and educate our own members as well. A large part of what I'm doing locally here in Ottawa is trying to educate our members on what the policy issues are and to open them up to the stance that the CHP takes on a particular matter.
So the communique that we are going to be talking about today is about, let me see what's happening in Canada, about crisis pregnancy centers and religious freedom.
Yes.
Wow, that's heavy stuff. What's going on?
Well,
Well,
in the last election, the Liberal government had in their party platform that they were going to revoke the charitable status for crisis pregnancy centers because they said that they were dishonest, they were not providing nice counseling, they were misinforming people, and that basically they didn't deserve to have charitable status. And
came up with that idea, Trudeau?
yeah, well, I guess the Trudeau and the party and so on. So after the government was reelected, they do. Prime Minister does a mandate letter to each of his ministers, setting out what he wants that minister to do in their portfolio. And the Minister of Finance's letter said, change the Income Tax Act to take away the funding, the charitable status for crisis pregnancy centers. So there's a budget coming down on April 7th. And that's normally next week, that's right. So that's normally where changes to the Income Tax Act are tabled. So we're kind of waiting to see whether they will go through with their intent to defund and
How
take
can
away
you go against that?
Well,
How can you help me?
what I did in the fall, one of our pro-life organizations here, a political organization, Campaign Life Coalition, organized a petition, and that's mostly what we have as a tool is using a petition. And they got about 14 or 15,000 signatures on that petition. And we had a rally on Parliament Hill outside of the Parliament buildings. And 3 of our politicians from one of the other parties who are pro-life came out and accepted the petition. And I had an opportunity to, with a number of other people, to address the people that were there about the issue and what we were standing up against and so on. We really have our hands tied because the coalition that exists between the Trudeau Liberals and the New Democratic Party have effectively given them majority rule. So the opposition parties cannot undo, they can delay, they can debate, whatever, but this Prime Minister has shown in the past that he's quite willing to just ram stuff through and have his way.
I noticed.
So that's I think is just the start of persecution that's going to come. And that's why we called this conflict with religious freedom, because the crisis pregnancy centers is just a start of pulling down the pro-life oppositions, those parties. It's basically the government saying, well, if we don't agree with it, we're going to get rid of it.
Sounds like the devil is working at hand, eh?
Yes. We do regard it in that way in our conversations and so on, is that it does seem to be the devil at play, but it also is something that should, and we hope will, rally Christians to sort of say, well, wait a minute, this is not the way that it should be done. We have, I guess, a kind of sleepiness that has overcome a lot of the Christians, and particular their pastors and so on. There are many of them, because churches here have charitable status, are unwilling to say too much or to encourage their congregations to get involved. So we have to try to carry that ball to the Christian communities and so on. Now, there are many pastors who will speak out and have spoken out, which is great. They can get their communities going and so on. And there are a number of religious organizations and so on that have organized themselves and so on. So it's not that there aren't people out there that are organizing and so on, but of course we get no voice from mainstream media, and we're
same down here.
Yes, I mean, I as I was telling you before we went on air, that I do follow the American political situation quite closely, because I think there are a lot of parallels between what is going on in the United States and so on. And actually, just a couple of weeks ago, there was an article in the First Liberty. From First Liberty, and they were saying the title was "Canada's Crackdown on Religious Freedom is a Wake-Up Call for Americans." And I think I look at it as
what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. This is what we're trying to do. They were looking at what was happening with the crisis pregnancy centers and saying that, well, it's just going to spread. It'll just come across the border, and in the same way as I watched it happening in Australia, I watched it happening in Europe, and sort of shaking my head and say, no, that couldn't come here. And then here we are.
It's over here now.
Yeah, it is. It's so I think it's an issue that knows no borders. It has
like a disease spreading.
Yes,
like
yes.
The pandemic itself.
As you said, the devil is just working in all places and in all different ways and so on. So it's certainly a challenge, and we're hoping that we can activate the Christian population and so on. But it's been difficult. It's been really difficult.
Awaken the masses. Awake the masses.
Yes, yes.
Through education, love, compassion, and prayer.
And we do that. Yes. Our party does operate on the basis that we pray a lot. We pray for our politicians and decision makers, and we are trying to influence them, not in a radical matter or whatever, but it's through prayer and Christ-like action and so on. And that's the way that we try to keep it. There are, I think, a lot of attempts to portray those of us that have faith in religion as radicals or as a fringe that doesn't need to be listened to and so on. And we try to keep it on a polite and respectful basis and so on. These people were elected and do represent a certain portion of the population, but we just don't feel that they're listening to all of the Canadian viewpoints or the American viewpoints, as it may be. It tends to be just one side that is being portrayed, and the rest is just put aside.
That reminds me of long ago, Hitler doing that with There's people, the pastors, the priests, the Jews, all that, going against them, quieting them, not allowing them to speak out. Otherwise, they will get arrested or killed. Is that what we're going?
Yeah, that's, I can't recall a time like we've had just in the last 18 months where pastors have been arrested for speaking out. That happened to be that it was on the restrictions that were put on churches because of the so-called pandemic, those kinds of restrictions. And when they spoke out too loudly, they were quite violently arrested at times, hauled away from in front of their families and so on, and locked up. And we just had one of our pastors 2 days ago was released after almost 50 days in prison in solitary confinement,
Dang.
23 hours a day. And
That's
they
not
were
great.
basically trying to make an example. And we had a couple of the pastors that had been arrested at our convention in Calgary in September, and they told their stories and so on. And basically, they were just trying to preach the word of God to their congregation, and the state was sort of saying, no, you can't, we're closing you down. And they would lock the doors, put fences around, put armed guards on it, and so on. I mean, these are our churches, for heaven's sakes. So that really, I think, brought to the fore for a lot of people how serious this matter was. That when we start locking up our pastors, and it's in several of the provinces where these arrests have occurred, and the court cases are still pending. They continue to delay them, to push them off, and so on, so that it won't come to a head. But it's really going to be an issue of religious freedom. It's really come down to that.
What's
And
going on all over the world now?
yes, exactly. And you have in the States with your judiciary, it's become politicized because you much more than perhaps in Canada, but we're actually seeing the same type of thing, is that some of the judges and the rulings and so on are not reflective of what we would consider to be proper justice and so on. It's sort of flavor of the day, or whatever the
Whatever
policy.
tickles their ears, they follow.
Yeah, yeah.
You find the younger generation starting to open up their eyes, though, or is it what?
Well, I know it's been said both in the United States and in Canada, in terms of the pro-life movement, that the youth seem to be really coming to the fore. They are really getting motivated. When we have our National March for Life here in Ottawa and other places, we tend to have a large number of youth, and they are extremely enthusiastic, very, very passionate about it. So I think part of that, I think, comes from the fact that science has shown through ultrasound and through this just basic scientific work what is actually happening in the womb of the mother. And it's not this tissue business. It's not that, well, there's no life there. And so you can't hide behind that anymore. And these are smart kids. I mean, they can do their own study, and they're sort of coming to the realization, no, this is just not right. So, there's a hope there. I know that in some of the Christian churches, they have huge youth groups, and are very, very active and motivated, and reaching out and so on. Some of them for social issues, but also for issues of life and their own faith expression and so on. I do read other Christian news sources, and some from the Reformed churches and so on, and just to keep myself informed of what's going on. And it's amazing how large some of the youth groups are there, and how passionate they are, and which is
More
great.
power to them.
I agree with you entirely. Yes, more power to them, because
You
we
betcha.
certainly need them.
Yeah, these two bills I want to ask about. Bill 11, C11,
Yes, C11.
And C.
That's currently being debated in the Parliament. It actually was in the previous Parliament, but when the election was called, it died. So they brought it back, even worse than what it was in 10, when it was before. And this is basically state control of the internet, of social media.
Here we go.
The government agency will determine what is misinformation, what is hate speech, what doesn't belong there, and they'll have it taken down. So again, this is part of that. Well, if we don't agree with you, we will silence you. So it is.
Hello, Moscow.
Yeah, it's really got the ire of quite a number of people. But again, every indication is it's just going to be rammed through and become law. And the other bill, excuse me?
A lot of countries are starting to do that with their own people.
Well, yes, I actually, there was one theme I was going to bring up with you is that when you look around the world at what's happening, these aren't just isolated things. It seems to be something that is orchestrated, because it's happening in so many different places. How many times have you seen 200 countries around the world do the same thing in terms of locking down their people, in terms of masking, in terms of cutting off the religious freedoms and so on? And yes, you're quite right in terms of the censorship. And we're supposed to have free speech, but they call it misinformation. They call it hate speech. They just keep changing the words and the definitions. And, you know, I'm amazed at when we had Orwell's 1984 written and you read what's happening in there, and it's like we're living it. It's like they're using that as a prescription. And he wrote about it so many years ago, but it's amazing that you're quite right. It's happening all around the world. This is instead of having, yeah, we don't have debate. We don't have the idea one eye against the other. Is if I don't agree with you, I'll shut you down. I'll just yell at you, or I'll just push you away, and so on. So we only have one worldview, and it's not Christian.
Well, we have to remember that the Lord himself is in control. He knows what's cooking. And he knows what's going down, like we're in, like they say in the book of Revelations. Are we there?
I keep repeating myself, and actually we share that thought at our national board meetings quite often. That I said, okay, the Lord knows what he's doing. We are here. We have a part to play. We need to play that part, whatever it may be. And that's really why I became more involved with THP at the national board level, is I felt a bit of a calling that I had some talents and abilities that I should bring to the fore. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. I don't know what's going to happen with it. I'll just continue to pray that I'm doing the right things and that I'm contributing as best as I can to the furtherance of God's message and so on. And I hope, Patty, that I live long enough to actually see the Lord step in and right some of these wrongs. You know, I look back in the Old Testament to the Jewish people and how many times they turned away from God, and yet they were brought back and reiterated their dedication and so on. Fell away again, but still came back. And I'm thinking, okay, hopefully this is coming soon. I hope that we will have the coming back. People, I think we've started to see it. I think an example of that for you in the U.S. was the U.S. convoy and the Freedom Convoy that we had in Canada. Those brought out people by the millions, people that probably were silent and had sort of felt, I don't have any voice and so on. And I've talked to quite a number of people, watched some videos and interviews and so on, and they said, well, I'd given up hope. So I just kind of went into my shell and I wasn't saying anything. When these trucker convoys happened, they sort of said, hey, there's other people that feel like me. So I'm inspired. I am hoping that there's other people that will share my views and so on, because they've been shut down for all of this time. It says, no, your views are, you're just a minority. Don't say anything and so on. Now they can see that there are a substantial proportion of the population feels the way that they do, that their voice has been taken away, and that injustices are being perpetrated, and they need to be opposed.
Godspeed, my love.